Creating dynamic forms like this, where validation changes based on user actions like this or like this, is essential for handling complex forms. For example, here imagine that the user is filling out an employment form, and if the user does not check the work experience box here, the form's validation will differ compared to when it is checked like this. If the user selects this checkbox, additional validation is required. So if the user tries to submit the form without filling out, for example, this company name here, as you can see, the validations have been raised and the user cannot proceed without filling out these fields here. But if the user tries to uncheck, for example, this work experience checkbox here, you see that there is no need to fill out that company name field anymore. Or if the user uncheck this box here, you see that only the full name here is needed to be filled for form to be submitted. For example, I put full name here and click on submit here, and we see that the submit button is working. But if I try to, for example, check the work experience checkbox here and hit on submit here, we see that the validation error is raised here, which is exactly that behavior that we want. Similarly, for no other languages checkbox, if checked, the user should be able to add or remove languages with each field having its own validation rules. This dynamic behavior can also apply to this radio group like this, and any other dynamic form behavior that you desire. Implementing such functionality can be a bit tricky, but it can be done in a clear and concise manner with minimal code. So let's implement it together. Because I wanted this tutorial to be understandable for all of the viewers, I decided to set it up from the scratch. I'm going to create a React project, and also I'm going to configure the project with Material UI. We're going to do it very fast, but if you don't prefer to follow along the setup phase of the tutorial, you can check the timeline and skip the setup part of the tutorial. Head over to your preferred IDE and create a simple Git project like this in any folder that you want. I'm going to choose the current directory like this and hit enter. Select React, TypeScript, SWC. Perfect. Now close the terminal, open the Explorer here, and remove all of the unnecessary files. Remove public folder. Head over to the src folder, remove assets, remove app.css, index.css, with-env. Perfect. Now head over to the app.tsx file here, remove everything, create the app function again like this, and return the app for now, and also export it as a name export like this. App. Then head over to the main.tsx file, remove unnecessary imports, and again import app as a named import. And the errors here will be gone by installing the npm packages. Now close every tabs and also Explorer and open up the terminal again. And let me just clear the terminal like this. And we need to install these packages like this. Let me just make it a little bit smaller for you to see all of them. Also, you can find all of the codes and gist in the description down below. These are all of the packages that we are going to need for this tutorial. These 4 packages are used for our component library. We are using MUI here, but the choice of component library is up to you. You can also use other libraries like ShatCN, Tailwind, and other options. It's up to you, but for the important part here, we're gonna use React hook form for our forms, and also Zod and hook form resolvers to connect, to create a connection between the Zod library and React hook form. So hit enter. Perfect. Now close the terminal. Let me just show you my package.json here. We see that we are using with 5 here with the React version of 18 and also the React hook form of version 7 for this tutorial. Then close it and open the main.tsx file. In this file, we need to initialize our MUI theme like this, remove the app like this, then paste this code, import necessary import theme provider from MUI, the create theme from MUI also, and also the CSS baseline to give us a very good CSS defaults for now. And also we are using dark mode here for it to be easy on our eyes for this tutorial, but you can also use light or you can also switch between them. It's up to you. For better organization and not making the main part of the tutorial really complex, I'm going to create a content container here, container.tsx file, to put our app inside this component. Then paste this code here. We see that there's nothing special about this file. We are using simple components from MUI. The box is essentially a simple div with the height of our screen, with this display of flex and centering everything. We are also gonna use a paper, which is another simple div but with a little bit of shadow. The stack is vertical flex, the typography showing the user the title of employment form, and also the children that are gonna be wrapped inside this container. Now head over to the app.tsx file and import the container that we just created from /container, and pay attention to what we import here from where. And after that, to see that everything is working, I'm gonna just use a simple text field from MUI like this, the simple label of, for example, full name for now. Now just open the terminal and run the npm run dev command to run the server on localhost for 5173. Now open it inside your browser. Now as you can see, we see that everything is working as expected, and then we can head over to the VS Code again. But before we continue, liking and subscribing can really help my career on YouTube. I really appreciate it. Now we need to implement our form logic here, but every form needs a schema to handle the validation side of the form. So open the Explorer and inside here create a new file called form schema.ts. Now inside I'm going to create a form schema and I'm going to import z from zot, and I'm going to create a simple object like this, the field of full name, which is going to be of type z.string.mean1. What this does is that we are creating a simple schema for our form by the help of zot here. So we are going to create our schema like this. We are creating a simple object by zot with the field of full name, which is going to be of type string with the minimum of 1, so it's required. And also we can use other properties. For example, I'm gonna put max 255 for the user not to enter more than 255, but this is not a zot tutorial, so I'm gonna leave them up to you. The minimum of 1 is more than enough for this tutorial. And also we can use the power of zot to infer the form schema constant here, like a type inside our TypeScript compiler. So I'm gonna use z.infer and I'm gonna infer the type of my form schema, and now if I hover over it, we see that exactly the schema that we just defined earlier is inferred, and we can use it like a type in our project. And after that, each form is gonna need default values. So I'm gonna create a constant called for default values with the type of form schema and the initial value of an empty string. If you don't know the usage of these default values here or this form schema type, you can check out my full React hook form tutorial, which I have explained them thoroughly. And after that, we're gonna export all of the things that we just defined. I'm gonna export form default values, the form schema, and also the form schema type like this. Now head over to the app.tsx file, and inside here, I'm gonna extract the necessary properties that I'm gonna need from useForm hook from React hook form. First of all, I'm gonna pass the form schema type that we just created for better type inferring inside the TypeScript. Then I'm gonna pass my config options like this. I'm gonna choose mode all, which will cause the form validation to work on demand. But for example, you can change it also to on submit or other options. But for better accuracy for this tutorial, I'm gonna choose all for it. For the resolver here, I'm gonna use .resolver. I'm gonna import it from hook form. Then I'm gonna pass my form schema that we just defined. And also for the default values, I'm gonna pass the form default values. Perfect. And after that, I'm gonna describe the register and also the form state field from it. And from the form state, I'm gonna get the errors property for now. Now, inside the container here, remove the text field here, and again, create a new text field. Then open the curly braces, and with this syntax, just register your input with the full name property. And as you can see here, if I hit control space here, we see that the TypeScript is helping us out with the help of this form schema that we just passed as a generic to our useForm hook. Again, put full name here. For the label, I'm gonna use full name like this. For the helper text, helper text, I'm gonna put the errors.fullname.message, and also I'm gonna use the error property like this, and I'm gonna pass the errors.fullname. What these two lines will do, first of all, the helper text is responsible to show the errors exactly below the input field, and also the error is like a boolean that will make our input field to the color red whenever we have an error like this. So we are going to convert this errors.fullname into a boolean by the help of these two exclamation marks. And now if we head over to our application, we see that the validation is working as expected, and it is exactly the thing that we just defined in our schema. If we check our schema, we see that we have defined our full name must be at least one character. Perfect. If I show you the final project here, we're going to implement this form exactly, especially the dynamic sections like this or this one by one. The first part that we are going to implement is the work experience section. If the user only enters his full name, for example, like this, and click on submit, we see that the submit button is working and he's gonna return us an alert and logging the current form values in it. But if the user does not provide the full name, we see that the submit button is not working. So I'm gonna put something here. And if the user checks the work experience checkbox like this, and if he clicks on the submit button, we see that it does not allow the user to submit the form because this new company name that has been generated by checking this checkbox is not filled yet. So if I'm gonna put something here and click on submit, we see that our validation is working perfectly and as we expected. So the thing here is that the form validation schema is changing on demand based on the user interactions. So let's implement this work experience section for now. So if I head over to the form schema, we need to improve this schema to add the dynamic validation behavior that we want. But we're not gonna put all of our logic in a simple schema. We're gonna split our form schema into smaller pieces to make it more maintainable and readable. So above this form schema here, I'm gonna create another schema piece like this. Const work experience schema is equal to z.discriminated union from z. Perfect. This discriminated union from z allows us to change the validation on our form on demand and in real time. It's exactly the same union from TypeScript. So if I'm gonna show it to you with an example, I'm gonna paste this temporary code here. Imagine in TypeScript, we have a type called, for example, laptop, another one which is phone, and we're gonna create a new product type by combining these two types. The laptop is gonna have its unique properties. For example, the laptop is gonna have a CPU property, or for example, a CPU model, but our phone type is gonna have a camera property, which is different from laptop. But our final product type is always gonna have a price field, because for a product, it doesn't matter it is laptop, it is a phone or laptop. Let me just change it to phone. I made a mistake. It doesn't matter that it is a laptop or a phone, and it's always gonna have a price field. But whether it's gonna have a camera field or a CPU field is dependent on this variant tag that we pass to our product here. This is also called tag union in TypeScript. Let me just create a product from this product type. Then I'm gonna pass, for example, the variant of laptop. Then let me just change product to laptop for better readability. Now I know that I'm gonna create a laptop, and the TypeScript is helping me out because that I have specified that I'm gonna create a laptop here by specifying the variant tag here. The TypeScript is helping me out that also I'm gonna need the CPU field. For example, I'm gonna pass Intel here, and also the price which is necessary for every type of products. But if I decide to change the variant from laptop to phone, we see that the TypeScript is not happy because the CPU doesn't exist on the variant phone of our product. So if I remove the CPU and hit Control and space, we see that TypeScript is helping me out that I'm gonna pass the camera here with any value that I want. And this is exactly the behavior that we are going to implement it inside Zod instead of TypeScript. Let me just remove all of this temporary code here. So we're going to extend our knowledge at this point into the Zod schema. So the thing that we are going to use to create differences in our schema, for example, I'm going to call it has work experience like this, which is exactly that checkbox that we saw earlier. And for the second argument, I'm going to pass an array of Zod objects. I'm going to pass 2 Zod objects for now. For the first one, I'm going to pass exactly this string that I pass here inside it with the value of true. In Zod, do not pass constant types like this. We must use this Zod literal, which is its rule. And also for the second Zod object, I'm going to open another curly braces, and instead of true, I'm going to pass false here. But when the has work experience boolean is true, or in other words, if that checkbox is checked, we are going to have another field that we just saw earlier with the name of company name like this, which is of type string with a minimum length of 1 for now. So if the checkbox is checked or has work experience currently has a true value, our form validation is going to have another field called company name, or if it is unchecked or it is false, we don't need any company name. And after that, we're going to need to use this schema inside our main form schema, which is very simple. By the power of Zod, we just need to put a dot here, then and our form schema with the new schema that we just created. And the TypeScript is really smart now and is telling us that we need to also specify has work experience value for our default values, which is of type our form schema, and our form schema now knows about our new form schema. So for now, I'm going to pass the value of false, but if I put true here, we see that TypeScript is throwing us an error that I also need to pass a company name, for example, something, if the checkbox is checked. But for the default values, I'm going to start with an unchecked checkbox. Now let's head back to the app.tsx. Exactly below the full name text field, I'm going to import form control label from material UI. Then I'm going to pass the register like this, and I'm going to pass the has work experience to it. Then for the label, I'm going to use, for example, do you have any work experience like this? And also for the control of it, I'm going to pass checkbox from MUI, but I did a mistake. I need to import the checkbox, the small b, from MUI material instead of icons. Perfect. If you don't know anything about this form control label, it just equip this simple checkbox, which is a really simple input with so much other functionalities. For example, becoming red when it is not valid, or it gave us this ability to put a label for it and also make it a control component instead of being an uncontrolled component. And if I head over to the application, we see that our checkbox is here, but when I click on it, nothing special happens and the dynamic fields are not here. To show that extra fields, I'm gonna create another text field like this. Perfect, which is the same as before, and it is exactly the company name that we just defined in our schema. Just don't pay attention to this error created by TypeScript for now. And if you head over to our application, we see that it will always be appeared here, and we need to toggle this text field based on the state of this work experience checkbox. So to do that, we need to have access to this field on our form. It's very easy with the help of React Hook form. Just we need to get the control from use form and can now have access to the has work experience with the help of the use watch hook from React Hook form. I'm going to pass the control here, and also the field that I'm looking for is a has work experience here. We see that the TypeScript also is gonna help us out at any point. And if I hover over it, we see that the type inferring also is working flawlessly. Now by the help of this value, I can toggle this component on and off. Has work experience. If it is true, I'm going to show this component to the user like this. And as you can see, by checking or unchecking, we see that the company name text field will be toggled. Perfect. But to show you that our validation is working perfectly, we're also gonna need a very simple form submitting scenario. I'm gonna import button from MUI, gonna change the variant to, for example, contained, and on click on it, I'm gonna do something in the future with the text of submit here. Then I head over to the use form hook, and after that I'm gonna get the handle submit from use form, and after that I'm gonna create a simple function called on submit for now with the type of submit handler. I'm gonna import it from React form, and I'm gonna pass the form schema that we just defined like this. Then this type here causes this callback to be provided with the current value of the form, and inside this function I simply gonna alert the user with the latest form value, and I'm gonna make it a little bit more readable for the user by passing null and 2 for the last arguments of this JSON.stringify function. And at the end of our component, I simply pass the handle submit here, and inside that I'm gonna pass the onSubmit function as a reference, not by calling it. Don't call it, just pass it as a function reference to it. And here if I click on submit, and if the form is not validated, we see that nothing is working, but if the form is validated, we see that the current value of the form is alerted to the user, and even for the work experience or the company name, we see that the validation is working flawlessly. Now the problem here is that the TypeScript is not smart enough to guess the errors from form state, so we need to extend it a little for errors to be gone. What is causing this error is that if I remove them and use the TypeScript IntelliSense, we see that everything is provided here except for the company name field, but we are sure that this company name field is presented on our form schema, which is here. But because the type inferring here or in our schema is really complicated, the TypeScript cannot infer this company name from our discriminated union from our schema. So we need to extend this errors object a little bit to make these errors here disappear. Inside our app.tsx file, I'm going to create a new constant called full errors or any other thing that you want, which is equal to errors here. But I'm going to change the type of it so the TypeScript will be happy with us. First of all, I need to get the field errors type from React form, and then I'm going to pass a generic to it, and then I'm going to pass the form schema to it. And now if I head over here and put full errors like this, we see that again the error is persistent. So the problem here is that we're gonna extract this section from our schema instead of this section. So the extract type utility on TypeScript is here to rescue us. So before the form schema, I'm gonna pass the extract utility and pass the form schema to it as a generic. And inside this, I'm gonna open curly braces and I'm gonna pass the hasWork experience with the value of true. And if we head over here, we see that the error from TypeScript has been disappeared, which is exactly the behavior that we want. But let me just substitute these errors here and also these errors here with full errors to have a much constant approach. So the thing that is happening here is that we are extracting only the section from our schema. Let me just put it side by side. We're going to getting only the section from our schema where the hasWork experience is true like this by specifying it like this. And when our hasWork experience field is true, we always gonna have company name, so the TypeScript is always happy. If you have followed along till this part of the tutorial, liking and subscribing means a lot to me. And also, if anything is concerning you about this tutorial, just leave a comment down below and I'm gonna respond to you as soon as I can. So let's move on. If we again head over to the final project here, now we are going to implement this no other languages section here. If the user checks this box, we see that a new dynamic field is generated here. But as you can see here, we see a plus icon here, which the user can click on it to add new fields and also remove unwanted fields. But at least one is required, so we're going to disable it when only one field is presented here. So the user click on plus icon and add new fields, or in other words, new languages to the form. But all of them must be fields for the form to be validated. For example, I'm gonna put Spanish, English, and also German here. And for the full name, I'm gonna pass foo. And when I click on submit, we see that our languages field is an array of 3 objects, each containing a name property with the value that we just specified inside our form. So let's implement this dynamic section too. So we need to head over to the form schema component. From here, let me just remove the Explorer. We're gonna create our new schema. I'm gonna call it language knowledge schema z.discriminated union. As before, I'm gonna pass the field knows other languages, which is also a boolean, and I'm gonna create brackets here, and I'm gonna pass two objects here, z.object, perfect. And then I'm going to pass knows other languages field, one with the value of true and another one, or the second one, with the value of false, like this. And if the checkbox is checked, we're going to have an array of languages, and defining array in z is like this, z.array. And inside it, I'm going to pass a z object with only a field of name with the value of z string with the minimum character of 1, or in other words, a required field. Now, at the end, I'm gonna use this schema inside our main schema like this by adding another and passing the language knowledge schema like this. And in default values, I'm gonna pass the knows other languages field with the value of false. So we have implemented the dynamic languages section of our dynamic form. Now let's implement it inside our app.tsx file. So inside the app.tsx file, exactly here, create another form control label by registering the knows other languages, the label of no other languages, and for the control as for just pass the checkbox like this. Now we see that the checkbox is implemented, but as before, we need to also toggle the dynamic fields according to the value of this checkbox. As the same that we have done for has work experience field, I'm going to just duplicate it, and instead of has work experience, I'm going to pass knows other languages, which is also a boolean like this. And exactly below the form control label of it, I'm going to pass the knows other languages. And if it is true, I'm going to simply return the array fields here. So if we head over to our application, we see that the toggling is working perfectly. Now we have to implement this section here. To use it, we're going to use the amazing array fields from React hook form. So below our use form hook here, I'm going to use another hook from React hook form called use field array like this. Then I'm going to pass the control from use form, and also I'm going to specify the name languages here, which is exactly these languages here from our schema. So from this, we're going to get the fields, replace, append, and also the remove. The fields is responsible for rendering each item of our array. The replace is responsible to replace our whole array with new values. The append is responsible for adding new items to the end of our array, and also delete an item from an array at a specific index. But as I said before, all of these are related to React hook form, not to dynamic forms. So if you have any questions, just ask in the comments section down below, or check out my full free React hook form tutorial on my channel. Now head over here to this section, remove this text here, and then we're gonna open curly braces here, use fields that we just destructed from the use field array, put dot here and map over them like this. Get each item as field, and also we're gonna need the index like this. Then here return a simple div like this. For the key of it, to make React happy, we're gonna pass the field.id like this. Now inside each div or each iteration, we're gonna render a simple text field like this. I'm gonna pass a SX property to it with a width of 100%. It's exactly equivalent to the style property, but in MUI components library, instead of style, we're gonna use SX, but it doesn't matter for this tutorial. Another field, we're gonna register each item from an array to this text field, but instead of putting quotations here, we're gonna put backticks here. Then we're gonna put the languages, but we need to use the specific index on our languages array. So I'm going to put dot here, $, and curly braces to put dynamic values inside our string, and pass the index here, again dot, and put the name here. This is exactly if I open the form schema and put it aside here, this path here exactly returns to this path in our schema. So we're gonna getting a specific item from this languages array, and we're gonna accessing the name value on it, and we're gonna register it to our text field on each of our iteration over the fields array. So let me just close it. Then for the label, I'm gonna simply pass the language name. For the helper text like this. I'm gonna pass full errors dot languages. But as you can see here, the languages is not recognized by the TypeScript. So as we just talked earlier, we need to also extend our full errors to contain the new languages dynamic schema. So if I head over to the full errors type here, I can also now extend it by adding an ampersand sign here and another extract from TypeScript, and also passing the form schema and passing the knows other languages. Let me just copy it from here, passing the knows other languages with the value of true. And now if I head over here, we see that the error is gone, and now I can go on like this. The languages might be undefined, so we're gonna use optional chaining operator and then open the brackets after a dot, passing the index here, and also another optional chain operator, then pass the name, also another optional operator, then paste the message, select the message here. With this way we can access the exact error message on our field arrays, and for the error I simply pass this code here. Also I'm gonna need another simple icon button for deleting, delete for ever rounded icon to remove the desired language name field. Then I'm gonna make it disabled if the fields.length is equal to 1. So we're not gonna let user remove all of the languages when the knows other languages checkbox is true. Then on the click on it, I simply pass the simple function remove, which we have got it from the useField array. I'm simply pass the index to it with the color of red or error. Also, we're gonna need another icon button for adding new fields to our array. It's pretty straightforward. Add circle rounded like this. I'm gonna use the fit content for it. For the click on it, I simply use the append to add new field to the fields array. Then for the color, I'm gonna use success for it to make it more readable. Now, if we check the no other languages field here, we see that nothing is showing here because we didn't add anything here to show to the user. To do that, we simply need to use a very simple use effect from React, use effect like this. And inside this simple use effect, let me just import it. If the knows other languages is true, I simply need to replace the languages array with only an array of only one item with simply the value of empty string, and also update the dependencies of this use effect like this. And now if we open our application, we see that if I click on this checkbox here, we see that everything is working as expected. If I click on submit, we see that the validation is working perfectly like this. I can add new items, and each item is gonna have its unique validation as we want, and also I can remove them. That was for the no other languages dynamic section of our form. Now for the last dynamic section of our form, which follows the same principle that we just talked about, but in another form of presentation. Also before, we have worked with only true or false states. Now here at the education level section of our form, we see that we have 3 stages for only a single field of our form. We have no formal education here, high school diploma, which the user need to enter the high school name, and the bachelor's degree. If the user has the bachelor's degree, he needs to enter his university name. So we have 3 states that we're gonna implement it very easily. Now just head over to the form schema as before, and exactly below the knowledge schema here, I'm gonna paste this new schema here to save the time. The last schema here, which is the education schema, exactly follows the same principle that we just learned in this tutorial, with the twist that instead of having only 2 states or a true false value, it's gonna have 3 values, a discriminated union with 3 states. One when the user has no formal education, one when the user has a high school diploma, and another one when the user has a bachelor's degree. So when the user has no formal education, there's no need for an extra field. When the user has a high school diploma, we're gonna need his school name, and when the user has bachelor's degree, we're gonna need his university name or any other hypothetical scenarios. Now as before, we're gonna add it to our main form here. I'm going to pass the education schema here. Also, don't forget to update the default values. And for the initial value, I'm going to pass the no formal education like this. Now head over to the app.tsx, and at the end here, I'm going to simply paste this code here to save the time. And because it is very repetitive and is not related to this tutorial, this is only responsible to create a radio group inside our form. So I'm going to import all of the necessary imports like this. Also the controller from React form, the radio group, also the radio itself. And as you can see here, each radio here, if I open the form schema side by side, you see that the values here must be exactly the value here. They must be equal to each other. For example, the high school diploma here must exactly be this value here, and the same for bachelor's degree. Now, if you head over to our application here, we see that we have our radio group here, which is working perfectly, but we need to also render the specific text field to each of them, which is pretty simple. First of all, I need to get the education level as the same as previous fields, and then let me just head over below the radio group, and if the education level is equal to, for example, the high school diploma, I'm gonna render a simple text field like that. Then I'm gonna register it with a school name with the label of a school name, and also the helper text of a school name message, and also the error to make it red when there's an error. Also, we're gonna need the bachelor's degree section like this, but as you can see, we have the same problem as before, but we can fix it pretty easily. So to fix that, just head over to the full errors here and put an ampersand here, extract from our form schema where for example, the education level is equal to no formal education. Let me just copy it again. I'm going to copy and paste it 3 times. Another one for high school diploma, and another one for example, bachelor's degree. Perfect. But now at this point, I realized that I made a mistake. Instead of wrapping all of them inside one field errors, you need to wrap each extract form schema inside its field errors like this. So for the first one, the second one, field errors, third one, field errors. Now that we have wrapped all of our extract schemas inside a field errors, we see that every errors inside our file is gone. And now when we go to our form here, we see that everything working as expected. I can pass values or not passing the values to see that the validation is working or not, but everything is working as expected. And also, for example, if I fill the company name field, we see that the company name field here is presented. And also if I uncheck it here, we see that the company name is not here in the alert dialog. So we realize that the values will be unregistered from our form correctly when they are unmounted from the screen. So this is the end of this tutorial. I hope you have learned something new. And if you have find this video helpful or you have any question regarding this video, just don't forget to leave a comment down below and I will answer your questions or feedback as soon as I can. And don't forget to like and subscribe as it really helps my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.